Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, friends, if I don't knock this camera off the table, more PSA graded returns. So, today's video is going to be a little different, mainly because I'm really excited about the cards that are in this particular stack. This stack has tons of Call of Legends cards, and after today, I'll be able to technically let you know in post-ed how many of the Call of Legend cards I have. This is a pretty big deal for me, mainly because Call of Legends is one of those sets that I wasn't into, learned a little bit more about it, wanted to get into it. Obviously, buying PSA 10s is crazy expensive, and I have other goals that I've prioritized as being more important, and so realistically, I wanted to spend more time. So I got super lucky, found a lady on Mercari, and that lady on Mercari ended up giving me a really sick deal on almost all of the Call of Legends cards that I needed. So I got them graded, and today we will reveal those grades. But before we get started, got some other EX stuff. So here is a Rayquaza EX, graded a near mint 7. This is the EX Dragon Rayquaza, so this is pretty dope. Obviously, back in these days, the trading card game did not have a dragon type, so every dragon type was actually colorless back in the day until they started mixing in delta species and things of that nature. A couple of things to note: there is one swirl directly in the middle of the Rayquaza, and they really obviously leaned in pretty heavily into the 3D on this card, which is super dope. I think it's an outstanding card. On the back, just a little bit of burring on both ends. You got some pretty significant whitening down here, which I think was a major driver of the grade that I got. But other than that, really nice card. Happy to have it in the collection. Next up is a pretty recognizable card out of EX Holon Phantoms. This is one of the Delta Species Pokemon. You can tell it is Delta Species, mainly because of the little stamp right there. And this is also a reverse holographic out of the set. So this is not only a reverse holographic, but it is a reverse holographic rare, and it is also Delta Species. That's why it's a Gyarados, that's an electric type, that has the stamp that has the gold lettering. So if you ever needed a breakdown of everything you needed to know about, reverse rares from the time, that sentence was probably it. This one graded a PSA 8. If you'll notice a couple of things, what's really cool is that the holographic on this card basically goes around the borders as well, which is pretty neat. It's a weird type of holographic because it's not your standard like Cosmo foiling. It's more of a more subdued holographic, but I think it's a combination of scratches on the surface as well as no particular spot having whitening, but maybe just some overall whitening that got this card the grade that it did. I have a feeling that cards like this will age really, really nicely. This is some really distinct artwork for Gyarados, which I don't think we've seen a lot of. And so I'm really happy because that card was really, really dope. And again, something that I really look forward to having. So here's a card that, really random. So bought this card off Troll Toad, I believe, and was super happy with it. This is a really neat Kabutops, I think. It's such a unique artwork. So obviously some things to note. Obviously off-centered top to bottom. You do have the first edition stamp, and this is actually Neo Discovery. It took me a hot minute to figure out what set this was from because I had no clue what this was back in the day when I submitted this like a year ago. So it took me, I don't know why, forever to figure out that this was Neo Discovery. And I've seen the Neo Discovery booster box and pack arts. They all have this temple there. So it really shouldn't have been as hard as it was, but here we are anyway. I really think this is a dope artwork, mainly because it looks like Kabutops is like underwater and is like hunting prey. So I thought it was really, really neat. And again, that old school holographic really can't be beat for like the rare cards from back in the day. The back of this card is really probably what did it in. You have a nasty little nick there and a nasty little nick there. The tops are better. Just the tops would have gotten it a 9, but with the bottom, I can totally see why it ended up with the grade that it did, which was a PSA 8. Next up, kind of keeping it old school a little bit, we have a Feraligatr first edition holographic card. Another card that I was able to pick up off of Troll and Toad. Beautiful Cosmo foiling in the back there, and really an iconic card. I know there are many people who have a really fond place in their heart for Neo Genesis, mainly because, you know, a lot of people grew up with it. Here's the thing, I look at this card and I don't really get that level of nostalgia. I know it's weird, but like anytime I see an EX card, I get the feeling that many of you get looking at cards like this. And it's mainly just because you know, for the most part, I wasn't exposed to cards like this. I wasn't exposed to Pokemon really until the next generation of cards. So ironically enough, I saw it up for sale. I thought it was really good looking. You know, by and far nothing crazy. The back is like super clean as well, so I was very happy about that. So all things considered, I said, you know what, let's do it. Let's pick it up, move along, do what I have to do with it, because I was really happy about it at the end of the day. And I just think it's nice to have at least one of the starters in my collection. Next up, and here's what I was mentioning. You see, I look at this card and I get so excited and so giddy because these are the cards I remember. So here is a Umbreon EX from EX Unseen Forces. Now, if you watch this channel or you're a fan, you know that I actually had quite a few of these. And the reason I do is because in the larger lot of cards that I revealed throughout the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, you'll know that I had a ton of these in that vintage lot of cards. This one isn't really outstanding in any meaningful way. I mean, I had ones where there were like swirls going all around the card. This one, ironically, doesn't have any swirls on it, and it graded a PSA 8, but I am super happy with the way this card came out. Looks great, and again, just happy. There is a pretty nasty nick up here. You can see it right next to my finger, and there's similarly a smaller nick up here. I think that is what did this card in terms of grading. There's also a very faint print line running across the surface of the card, so I think a combination of those three things are what got it the grade that it did. Next up is a Shiftry EX, and this one is different from the one that was in the video about 2 weeks ago. The reason for that is because obviously many Pokemon got several EX versions throughout their lifetime. As you can see, this one does have half of a swirl on the border of the card. I find it hilarious that many of these EX era cards do have the ability to have a swirl or a half a swirl, which is pretty funny to me. This card, really interesting. He looks like he's like falling down from a tree, so he's going like that, which is pretty cool. He is meant to be like a leaf ninja, so I thought that was pretty neat. Just like, you know, a little homage to the story behind the Pokemon, which I think is pretty cool. Also, the artist on this, Ryo Ueda, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I've noticed his artwork on several of the EX cards, so it's crazy how much like that one person can influence the amount of sort of nostalgia, right? Like his artwork kind of triggers that real nostalgia for me, in the same way that many, you know, many people, including myself, really kind of love the artwork of Mitsuhiro Arita for the same reason, right? He drew some of the most favorite artworks from back in the day, and that's why whenever you see his artwork, you're like, yo, it's from back then. So here is a PSA 9. This card did really, really well. Grading wise, I think there's some very faint dots here, here, and here, so these three corners of the card. Other than that, really good looking card. Again, just happy to have an ultra rare from the era in my collection, which is pretty dope. Next up on the list is so here's a card. Here is the Darkrai and Cresselia top half of the Heart Gold and Soul Silver Triumphant card. So if you haven't checked out the previous video, which I definitely recommend you do, you'll see that in that particular set, I had the bottom half of this card, which is just the Cresselia. Now, the problem with this card, and I'm going to try to get it on screen, but I don't know how well that'll work out for me, is that about right here, right above where my finger is, there is a dent on the Darkrai. So unfortunately, that is probably what did this card in. The card is also filled with holographic, so I assume at least some part of it was, you know, some scratching and stuff like that. But typically when there's a dent on the card, not necessarily a crease, but just a dent, you should expect a PSA 6, which is exactly what I got. Technically, I now do have the top and bottom halves of this card. The only pain in the neck is that they aren't in matching grades, so that's kind of annoying. The back of this though, really good looking. 1, 2, 3 edges have some whitening, and it's pretty significantly shifted left to right. But all things considered, that doesn't really come through on the front of the card, which is kind of weird, but all things considered, it got the grade that it did. I will certainly try again with additional iterations of this card just to see, who knows, maybe one day I get lucky, right? Moving right along, we have a Altaria EX from Dragon Frontiers. This one has a pretty pronounced print line. You can see right down the middle of, like, literally splitting Altaria in half is a pretty wicked print line, and that also stays true for the top and the bottom of the border. Other than that, you got a little bit of denting up here. As you can see, this got a very good 3, which isn't the best of scores. And then I'm really looking at this card to see what else is good with it. I mean, there is a pretty significant, like, dent right here, to the point where I can definitely see why this card got the grade that it did. There's also a part of me that's like, did something go wrong during shipping? Because, like, I don't know that I would have just taken this card had I known how poorly it would have graded. But, you know, the thing with such a large submission is that it's oftentimes hard to keep track of everything. Here we have a EX Dragon Frontiers Salamence, really good looking Pokemon. Love what they do with these particular Dragon Frontiers ultra rares. This is a Delta species, so it's a Salamence, but as I was saying earlier in this video, it's not colorless energy, instead it's a water energy, or rather a water type. There is a pretty significant print line running down the middle. This one is like literally down the middle of Salamance's wing, so just around this top to bottom clean through. I do like that cert number though, 46853-100. Pretty nice round number there. The back of this card, not pristine. I would have given it a PSA 9 from the back alone, but obviously once you combine that with this pretty significant print line, and then maybe some scratches that we just aren't seeing on camera, it's probably going to end up getting that PSA 7 that it did. Now, here's where we get into the Call of Legends stuff. So before we do, some cards that look like Call of Legends cards but actually aren't are the promo cards. So just to be super efficient about it, I actually have a full set of the promos, so that's pretty neat. I have the Entei, Suicune, and Raikou, each of which come from a different tin. So in case you're unaware of how this works, very similar looking cards came out of the Call of Legends set. And then, in addition to that, these cards were given away in promos in tins that came out right around the time from, 2010. So it's kind of weird because obviously whenever you start thinking about tins, there are a couple things you need to consider. I'll just briefly call out some of the really interesting things. For this one, you do have a swirl right here, so you can see how it kind of transitions from border to the actual holographic, and that it should have realistically kind of, had it shifted a little this way, there would have been a swirl right there. With this one, I imagine that the edges kind of got beat up a little bit. Back in this era of Pokemon, they didn't really do a great job. Also, there's all that holographic that you have to consider, right? Here's the Suicune, similar concept. This time the swirl is shifted, and we do have it in the upper right-hand corner of the artwork. And again, the back just torn to pieces. It ended up getting a 7, which is better. It's technically on par with the Salamence, but being that it is a promo card, it obviously went through a different life cycle than that of the Salamence, which probably just pulled from a pack, right? And here is finally the Raikou, same concept. The back is a little bit more beat up, and you can see it's actually even off-centered, which may have even played a role in the grade that it got. Now, moving into the more traditional Call of Legends set, here is the Palkia Shining Legend card. Really good looking card. Obviously Palkia is pink as opposed to the white color that it usually is, and is super dope, good looking card. So definitely a card that I am excited to have in my collection. Next up is the Groudon. Groudon is a hideous mustard color when he is shiny, and as you can see here, they really kind of lean in on the sort of like three-dimensional artwork, as well as getting a really imposing pose. So love that. This one graded a 7, and the reason it did, mainly because of the back, just some major spots of burring that probably didn't do the best to contribute to its overall grade. Here is a card that I'm really excited about. Here is the Lugia card. As you can see right there, really nice swirl, just a fat swirl right on Lugia's head. Lugia is this purpley pink color, beautiful looking card. Couple things to note, this is a really distinct card, and between this and the Gold Star, I would argue Kyogre probably got the most love in terms of shiny Pokemon artwork in the TCG. One major detractor is this huge ding up here, and another major detractor is the general amount of whitening on the corner. Basically all four corners. So I'm surprised this card didn't do lower, but I guess because the holo was in good enough shape and it was just the whitening on the backs, they gave it the 7. Next up, we have the Rayquaza. So let me see, did I actually do it? Yes, I have the Hoenn Trio in sequential cert. So I have 93, 94, 95, which is pretty neat. The Rayquaza is black, and as you can see, that's the shiny variant. The regular color for Rayquaza would be green. And my theory with Rayquaza is that every single artwork with Rayquaza, with its mouth open, looks like it's laughing at a bad joke. So you guys let me know down below, does Rayquaza look like he's laughing at a bad joke? Because in every artwork I've ever seen with him with his mouth open, it basically looks like that. As you can see, in this particular case, I love the background of the card. The background really kind of tells an interesting story here. So there is that. Interestingly enough, this corner on the front of the card is really rough. You can kind of see what I'm speaking about right there. And yet, amazingly, this got an 8. Do I think it rises to the level of like, oh no? Nah, it's definitely not like splitting. But, you know, I'm surprised it kind of got as high a grade as it did. The back of this card, though, pretty decent. You got burring on here, but other than that, nothing kind of crazy that detracted from the overall grade on that one. Coming up next, we have Deoxys, which means I have all of the Hoenn legendaries, I believe, in sequential cert. This one got a 6, so this one got beat up. One thing I will note, there's a huge scratch running right here. You can actually kind of see it on camera. It's basically a line. Good looking card, otherwise relatively decent centered. As I'm looking at it, it looks just generally scuffed up, which I think is what caused it to have the, you know, the grade that it did. One thing of note, Deoxys is in, I believe, just his regular form. He's not in like attack or defense form. That's the one where he has the one DNA-shaped hand and the one regular hand. And the back of this card is, you know, relatively decent. So I think really it was the front of the card that really kind of detracted overall from its quality. So definitely something to bear in mind is that even if the front of the card is great, it may not always be the front of the card that gets you the grade. Next up is a Entei. From Call of Legends. So this is another, so unlike the previous promo, this is the one that you would actually pull from the set, and as you can see, really good looking card, different perspective on that card, which is what kind of distinguishes it. And it actually got a 9. I'm actually pretty impressed. There is a little bit of burring right here, but I think other than that, the holo on this was near pristine based on my review. Yeah, so I think, you know, PSA 9 is definitely a justified grade for that particular card. Next up, and kind of finally but not least, is another Palkia. This one got a 6. Not too happy with it, but this one is definitely in far worse condition. And there's actually a pretty significant like dip right here. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, so you can actually see that on the back of the card as well. Yeah, so right there, you can kind of see how there's like a slight dip in the surface of the card. So that's what got that the grade that it did. And finally, but not least, for today's video is a Typhlosion EX. This is a good 2, so definitely not the best grade on a card that I've ever gotten. A couple of reasons why. You got this corner up here, which is in really rough shape. You got a corner down here, which is in really rough shape. You have a crease in this card, and you also have this corner basically peeling. At this point, yeah, the back of this, like, look at that. That's literally rounded off, rounded off, rounded off. This is the only one that kind of has its original factory shape to it, and then this entire side just basically looks like chopped up. So in the grand scheme of things, not necessarily the best condition card. You know, might be better as a binder card if I'm being entirely honest with you, but who knows, this might be an incredibly low population card as well. in this number, so this might be, you know, one of X amount that exist in the Pokemon world, so who knows. But with that said, friends, thank you again for joining today's video. I do hope you enjoyed what is another PSA graded return from the channel, and I hope you are excited about the prospects of, you know, being able to grade cards again. I am very excited because I do think once it reopens, it'll definitely be a fun and enjoyable time for a lot of people. Grading cards is a fun aspect of the hobby, and unfortunately it's, you know, it's become a vehicle for investment. It's become a vehicle for a whole bunch of other stuff, including people who just want to send in a whole bunch of modern day stuff. But you know, for me, I derive the most fun from grading when it's vintage stuff. So let me know if you agree with that down below. But other than that, friends, thank you again for your viewership. You could have been anywhere on the internet, but as I always say, I appreciate the fact that you stopped by and spent some time with me. And other than that, if you're not already, feel free to subscribe to the channel and join the Gengar Gang. Other than that, I once again appreciate your viewership. Thank you for stopping by, and we will talk soon. Peace.